A very warm welcome to episode 1 of the FarmED podcast. I'm your host, Jonty Brunyee, the manager of FarmED, and I'm here with part of my team, Ian Wilkinson, director, founder and farmer. Hello.
Hello.
Chris Nash, assistant manager. Hello, Chris.
Hey.
Hey. Yeah. Fiona Mountain, head of marketing and communications for here at FarmED. Welcome, Fiona. This is episode 1. We'll be hoping to do a podcast maybe every month, interviewing team members, people who come to see us here at FarmED, and hopefully gathering some inspirational stories from the farmers and the regenerative foodies that we work with. So do join us over the next few months. Ian, first question to you. Where did FarmED come from? What was the history? What's your vision for this place?
Well, I tell you what, Jonty, it's taken me a long time to get here. When I was 16, having worked on a number of local farms where I lived, I wanted to be a farmer, so I decided I'd go to agricultural college, and I started off as an apprentice. And it was brilliant. I had a very, very good time learning about farming, but it did dawn on me when I was in my 20s that I probably would never be able to farm because farming's expensive, and unless you're able to fund it, or to if you perhaps come from a farming family, it's unlikely that you will farm in your own right. So
you weren't from a farming family?
No,
yeah.
No, and it's taken me a little while, well actually 35 years to become a farmer. So it's been a really interesting journey for me. What I've done for most of my time, in fact, I've been in agriculture, I've been a seed merchant, I work in the Cotswolds, and we have a seed business which has grown over that period of time and is now a major seed business in the UK.
And that's Cotswold Seeds?
Yeah, that's it. And having spoken to so many farmers over such a long time period, I've just realised that there's so many wonderful stories associated with farming, and we felt it's a simple arrangement at home. We just felt so strongly that if we were ever in the position to be able to tell that story through the work we were doing, then we should do that. Anyway, as I say, 35 years later...
You bought a farm?
We bought a farm.
Yeah.
Can you believe it? I mean, it was really bizarre. I mean, it's a relatively small farm. It's 107 acres. Okay. It came up at auction, and it's in our district, and we went along and stuck our hands up and came away with a... I felt, quite shocked by the whole thing, actually. It was a massive event for a family to buy a farm.
I'm sure, yeah.
Huge event. Anyway, Here we are, 7 years later.
Yeah.
And now we are developing what is known as FarmED. So Honeydale Farm is a mixed farm in the Cotswolds, and on that farm we aim to tell a story about farming, how it is, how it's developing, and how it's changing in the future. And it's that changing element that we're really excited about.
Okay.
Couldn't have picked a prettier spot.
It's not bad, is it? Here we are overlooking the Evenlode Valley, and it's a window on the farming world out there. So what's the vision? What's your mission here at FarmED?
Well, it's become quite clear. It's taken us a little while to have clarity on this subject. Basically, we are aiming to accelerate the change towards regenerative farming, and also to create a sustainable food system that supports that change.
Okay, yeah. And doing that by what? Knowledge exchange, education? How are you going to make that happen?
Yeah, all of those things. At the moment, there is a real thirst for information to understand what a new, evolving farming system will look like. Farming's always changing. We've been through so many, the Green Revolution and so many revolutions within agriculture. But
can I just ask a question? Do you think people will look back on? I mean, I did the agrarian revolution when I was in my O-levels. Do you think people will look back on this time in history and go, this is the next agricultural revolution?
I think they will. I really do. I've worked as an advisor for 30 years. I started my career as a flag advisor and then worked for the National Trust and all sorts of things. And I banged on about sustainability in farming for 30 years. But in the last 2 or 3 years, regenerative agriculture, agroecological agriculture, doing things different is really taken off. And I think I've never been in a farming instance where there's so much change at once.
Yeah, we're calling this the fourth agricultural revolution.
Okay.
And it's meant to be driven by complexity and by scale. But you can take that in one or two ways. You can either say, the technology is coming. We've got robotics and data-driven stuff, and that's your complexity and just the scale of big data. Or you can take it the other way. You can say that, well, mixed farming is the way to go. We need more arable and livestock within the system, and that brings your complexity.
So are we saying regenerative agriculture is for everybody? Small farmers, medium-sized family farms, big agribusinesses?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it is for everybody. For me, there's so many different forms of regenerative agriculture. So it isn't just one thing.
Yeah.
It's a multitude of things, and that's what will make it work.
Yeah. So we've said the term about 10 times already, but what is regenerative agriculture? How would you define it, or how would we define it?
That's a really great question. So for me, in simple terms, it's about building rather than depleting. It's as simple as that.
Okay. Building what?
So let's take the basic building blocks of farming, which of course is soil. So to grow any of the crops, to feed any of the animals, we need soil to do that with. So it's about increasing the capacity of the soil to making the soil more fertile, making it hold more water, and it rather than depleting it, which is what we've done with industrialised agriculture over my lifetime. We have depleted the organic matter in the soil. That's the remnants of life, the carbon that's in the soil. A lot of that carbon is now in the atmosphere, and that's given rise, of course, to climate change.
So is regenerative ag the solution to climate change, or one of the solutions? Where does it fit in?
Well, I think for me it is the solution, because it builds rather than depletes, so it can cool the climate by locking up carbon back into the soil. Okay. And there's many different forms of it.
Okay. So I guess a lot of people remember regenerative agriculture or conservation agriculture as minimum tillage, zero tillage, but it's more than that.
Yeah, I think that's been leading to it. But as Chris has said, there's so much more technology coming to bear now. There's so much more data that we can collect.
I just think it's all about evidence at the moment. It's engaging that wider audience. Whilst you have the farming community that can tell you what's been going on in their local landscape for years and years and years, it's about spreading the message through data, showing people that, and just convincing the corporations that at the moment are in big ag, and just showing them that if you start from here, you can eventually get to this point.
Is the data out there? Is there any data that shows regenerative agriculture can solve or reverse climate change? Or is it early days?
Oh, no, I think we're all on this journey at the moment.
Yeah, that's
And FarmED is at the beginning of this journey.
Yeah.
We've got our control plots, we've got our herbal fertility building kind of rotation in that is 8 years. So I think we are yet to fully see a full-on data set that you can truly term regenerative. Because in my opinion, the regenerative is an ongoing process. You don't ever stop. You just keep going. There isn't an end point to this.
Okay.
So you see, I agree, and I think I'd just like to add in this: degenerative agriculture. Okay, so degenerative agriculture has taken about 4 generations. I mean, roughly speaking, 100 years. Yeah. We have intensified our production without really putting much back in.
No, I agree. I mean, I grew up on an arable farm in Nottinghamshire, and I witnessed Dad ripping out hedgerows, ploughing every bit of grassland, chopping down veteran trees. And that was an industry I didn't want to be in the 70s and early 80s. So I've worked in this farm sustainability sector for quite a while, and I've got very frustrated over the years that sustainability, or protecting what we have today for tomorrow, isn't going to work. With every metric is negative. So we have to rebuild, we have to enhance. And that, for me, is where regenerative agriculture comes in.
Because if you destroy something already, or it's partly destroyed, there's no point in preserving what's not actually that good in the first place, is there? You've got to basically make it better.
Exactly. And it's complex, as Chris said.
Yeah. And nobody meant to do this. I mean, we all genuinely, I think I'm the oldest of our crew here, and we genuinely wanted to improve everybody's welfare and produce more food. I mean, that was what it was all about, and that's been the journey that we've all been on. But I think we've been going down this road perhaps for too long without realising that some of the the causation was sort of done by ourselves. So the question now is, what do we do about it, and can regenerative agriculture be a real alternative to set straight a different course, if you like, for the future?
Yeah, okay. So here at FarmED we run education events, lots of knowledge exchange stuff going off, some research, and there'll be space for personal development as well, and some regenerative business mentoring. What else do we have on the farm here? What features and habitats can visitors see?
So there's lots going on the farm. What we've done is we've created a rich tapestry of different types of farming around these buildings. So if we start on the top of the farm, on the light land, where the crop rotation exists, we have wheat and oats, we have livestock, we have fertility building lays, cover crops, and wild bird seed mixes. We have field margins, which are providing habitats for invertebrates and farmland birds. We've woodland, which we've planted. Roughly about 12% of the farm now is woodland. So on that section of the farm, which is about half of it, we've got a really, truly diverse area. On the other half of the farm, which is on some slightly heavier soil, we've got a wildflower meadow, we've got tree planting around our natural flood management scheme, we have a heritage orchard, which has got 250 different local varieties of mainly Oxfordshire apples, pears, plums, cherries, you name it, it's all there. And we've also got an apiary with 13 hives. We've got a horticultural area which is run by 3 local people, which is a community-supported agricultural scheme which feeds 60 families with their fresh vegetables. And what I love about it is literally around every corner you go, you see something different. And not only do you see something different in terms of the crops and the farming system, but also in terms of the people and the wildlife. And that really excites me.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place to be, a wonderful diverse place to be. It's really exciting. Fiona, the audience, who is FarmED aimed at?
I think the answer to that is everybody, because it's a farm and food centre, and while not everyone is a farmer or is that interested in farming, perhaps everyone eats food. And if you eat food, increasingly you're becoming more interested in where the food has come from, if it's healthy or not, and this FarmED therefore will be connecting farming and the produce of farmers to the people who eat it.
So holistic, joining everything together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's
from soil health to gut health.
Absolutely. So it's young and old. It's farmers. It's chefs. It's students. It's everybody who has an interest in food.
Excellent. Yeah, really exciting. Is there a risk that regenerative agriculture? It's a bit of a boom right now. Everyone's maybe jumping on the regen ag bandwagon. Is there a risk of greenwash with regen ag?
Oh, there's a good question. Yes, I guess there is. I mean, there's always the opportunity for somebody to offset their problems, isn't there? And but I think I think farmers, farmers are pretty amazing people. I mean, they're very quick to change a system, and they're very quick to adapt. And I think genuinely it's in the farmer's best interest to have a regenerative farming system. Yeah. I think the areas around food, which Fiona was mentioning, are really important. And we do all eat food. And what's for me is really fundamentally important is that we support a regenerative agricultural system. So I think it's in everybody's interest to understand where their food comes from, how it's produced, and how they can make a difference by actually going out and putting their money where their mouth is. And that is really important to me.
Do you see a space for a regenerative food brand in the future or marketing scheme?
That's a good question. Yes, I suppose there might be. There's lots of schemes at the moment, aren't there? Take organic as an example, where there's a certification of the type of food and farming system that it's come from. So maybe there's room for more, but none of us want to become confused. Yeah. Remember, regenerative farming is a mixture of many different types of respectful rebuilding farming systems.
Yeah, but there's a need for routes to market here somewhere, isn't there? So consumers can buy regenerative produce.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, we need to very clearly signal where food is coming from in order for people to support it.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe explain to the public and consumers more what regenerative farming is, because although they might have grasped what organic is now, because that's been around a long time and people will go and buy organic in the supermarket and what have you, the consumers might not understand the term regen ag in the way that some farmers don't really already do it. It's a very new term. So
great. So exciting times, lots of opportunities for sure, big challenges ahead for everybody in the farming, food and land management sectors. I personally believe that only farming and forestry can be carbon neutral. Aren't all the answers within farming and forestry right now?
Yeah, good point. Absolutely right. Your farming, covers so much of the countryside, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What, 3/4 of England?
Yeah, absolutely.
It can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting bit. It is a real solution to many of the problems that we face: climate change, environmental reconstruction, and wildlife delivery.
Lots of opportunity. So thank you Fiona, thank you Ian, thank you Chris. You've been listening to episode 1 of the FarmED podcast. Join us next month for episode 2, where hopefully we'll be interviewing some inspiring visitors and guests to FarmED. See you soon.